Hello everyone, and welcome back to our bizarre and unusual world. Today I'm going to be covering another unsolved case. Today we are looking into who put Bella into the Wych Elm. So as usual for this series, I will be covering the who, what, when, where, why, and how of this particular unsolved case. Starting with the when and the where of this particular case, we start this case in the middle of World War II on April 18th, 1943 in Hagley Woods in Worcestershire, England. So what is this case all about? So on that day, roughly 80 years ago now, 4 local boys headed into Hagley Woods to do some poaching. They were really looking for birds' nests to find some bird eggs. Now they came up upon this large tree. The oldest boy decided to climb up in it to look for some nests, but he did not find any birds' eggs. Unfortunately, he found a human skull looking back at him. Of course, the boys were kind of terrified, and they also were worried they were going to get in trouble because they were technically illegally poaching in the area. So they agreed they wouldn't discuss what they had found, and they all headed home. But the youngest boy felt really bad about finding a human skull, and eventually he told his father what they had found. So the police were contacted, of course. They headed out, and not only did they find a skull, but they found a whole skeleton basically, with some clothing items left over, a shoe, a golden wedding band. The only thing that was missing was a hand, but that was later found just a little ways away from inside that tree. So a medical exam was done at Birmingham University, and they determined that this woman was around 35 years old. She had brown hair, a very distinct jawline, and very different teeth that would be very noticeable to people. They also concluded that at some point she had given birth, and her body had been dead for around 18 months, making her estimated death around October 1941. A piece of peach taffeta from her skirt was found inside her mouth, so they kind of suspected that the cause of death was asphyxiation. They also immediately determined that this woman would have had to have been put inside this tree alive or immediately after death, because with how small the space was, there was no way she could have been placed inside after rigor mortis would have set in on her deceased body. The professor who examined her said, "I cannot imagine a woman accidentally slipping in there. Neither do I think it's reasonable for a woman to crawl into that place to commit suicide." Police figured that it wouldn't be too difficult to identify this woman, especially with her teeth. They thought that they would be able to look up teeth and dental records and compare that to potentially missing people, and that they would be able to identify this missing woman. Sadly, nothing came up. They had no success with looking through dental records for this particular person. No one came forward to identify her or say that their loved one was missing, and any of the missing people reported in the area, none of them matched this description. So they did believe that she was a stranger to the area, but they had no real leads on who she was, and by default they had no suspects. Now this was wartime, so much was happening. People were moving around for safety or other reasons, and it was just very hectic, but they were still just unable to identify who this woman was. Going back through police records, they did notice that there was a report from July 1941. A man had been walking in that wooded area, and he reported hearing a woman screaming. He came upon a school teacher, and that person also heard this woman screaming, so they had reported it. Police came out, but they found no sign of foul play. That would have been about 20 months before her body was discovered, so not far off from the estimated 18 months deceased. So why? Why did this case suddenly kind of have a surge of popularity? Because essentially it had gone cold pretty fast, but then some creepy and eerie things started happening relating to this case. Around Christmas 1943, different messages would start to appear around town, written in white chalk, that would relate to this woman inside the tree. Who put Bella in the Wych Elm? So who is Bella? This was the first name that had ever been connected to this potential victim. Over the next few months, more messages similar to who put Bella in the Wych Elm were written across town on different kind of abandoned buildings. While some people assumed that this was just a hoax or children playing around, others speculated that some of the locations of where the writing actually was were kind of difficult to get to, and could the kids really reach that or be able to write it out properly? So there was definitely mixed emotions on if this was a hoax or if it was a clue to this case. Was it a hoax? Did someone know something? Did someone have a guilty conscience? They did, however, believe that the initial messages that started out were by the same person, and then moving forward when they started happening again, they believed those were copycats. I believe the last message or graffiti was found in 1999. So who? Who was she? We unfortunately do not know, but we can go over some of the theories on who people think this Bella in the Wych Elm was. So in 1944, a sex worker came forward and said that her friend Bella had gone missing in 1941. She worked that area and had last been seen around that particular wooded area. So she thought maybe that this was her friend, had the same name, missing around the same time, but they couldn't find anything concrete or specific to connect that Bella to the body found in the tree. Another theory came from a professor, Professor Margaret Murray, who suggested Bella was part of some sort of dark magic ritual. This was mostly based on the fact that her hand was found away from her body, and that is similar to certain occult practices, kind of similarities to a ceremony known as the Hand of Glory. And in ancient times, this is something they did to witches, or kind of in dark magic, according to her. Although police have claimed that they believe the scattering of bones was just simply like animals in the area. There was also a legend that the spirit of a dead witch could cause no harm if she was imprisoned in a tree. This professor also believed that Bella was connected to some other occult murders that she had been studying, so she thought that this was all related to like dark magic. So another popular theory is that this Bella woman was a spy during the war. The idea is that this woman was linked to a German spy ring operating in Birmingham. This area was not far from munitions factories, so having spies reporting where those particular factories were would have been extremely dangerous during wartime. And as time went on, there was a couple more clues that this might have been the truth to the story. 10 years later, into the 50s, a newspaper received a letter from a woman who called herself Anna. She claimed to know more information about Bella in the Wych Elm. So part of what she wrote: "The only clues I can give you are that the person responsible for the crime died insane in 1942, and the victim was a Dutch and arrived illegally in England about 1941. I have no wish to recall any more." So while Anna did not want to come forward at first, police eventually took a statement from an Una Hainsworth, who they believe was Anna. Her story was very similar to the one that had been sent to the newspaper. And essentially, she says that her husband and his friend went out to a bar. They came upon this girl who I guess they somehow knew was this spy. Then they took her out, they strangled her, and put her in the tree. Or another version of that story is that, again, her husband and friend met this girl at a bar. They suspected that she was a spy, and she kind of passed out in their car. So they put her in the tree to maybe scare her and hope that when she awoke in the morning, she would change her mind about relaying any important information. But she did not wake up. Una claimed her husband went insane, apparently haunted by the image of a woman in the Wych Elm. He died in a mental hospital in 1942, a year before the body was found. So how? How is this still unsolved to this day? Well, unfortunately, most of the evidence is gone, including her body. While most people would suggest DNA testing to see if there's some link to figure out who she was, but her bones are gone. In a quote, Dr. Lund said, "As far as I know, we gave up the body to the university, and then the bones mysteriously disappeared." Other reports say that various professors were looking over the evidence files and passing it around, and over time, they just misplaced the entire case file. Midlands police confirmed they do not have her body, and they actually made a statement in 2018 that they can't find any documentation that relates to her case. Someone seriously screwed up. You lost her body, the case file, all of the evidence, or someone covered up something. So what do you guys think? Had you ever heard of who put Bella in the Wych Elm? What theory do you tend to lean towards on who she actually was? Or do you have a different idea yourself? How do you think she ended up in that tree? Considering all of the evidence is gone, unless it like mysteriously pops back up again, I think that this case is unfortunately going to remain unsolved. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.